Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. In today's video, we are going to learn how to make a smoked pants, or you can call it a shirred pants. All right, so if this is something you would love to learn, kindly watch this video to the end and make sure you subscribe. So right here is my fabric, and I've folded the fabric into two, as you can see. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark out 6 inches separately. But before I mark the 6 inches, the length of my trouser is 37 inches, but this particular one is going to be 19 inches. And then from the 19 inches, I removed 1.5 inch as the band. All right, the band is 1.5 inch, and you're going to measure the band upward. I have the starting point line of 0.5 inch, so I'm going to place the 1.5 inch on the starting point, and from there I marked 19 inches, as you can see. So the remaining measurement, which is going to be 18 inches, is going to be the length of the gathers that I'm going to stitch at the lower part of this pants, because this pants is going to be smoked at the top and the lower part of it is going to have gathers. Okay, so for the shirred, or for the smoked, I'm going to be marking 6 inches separately. All right, I'll mark 6 inches down separately before marking every other measurement. So aside the 6 inches, I did not add any other sewing allowance. Okay, all the allowance I'm going to be adding it to the back. I didn't add any allowance to the front. So right now I'm going to take the hip line of 8 inches. Okay, making sure that you mark your band allowance of 1 inch, 1.5 inch upward, and from there I'll also mark my crotch line of 10 inches. But I added 0.5 inch to the crotch because this is an Ankara fabric, it does not stretch, so I'm going to mark 10.5. But if you are making use of a crepe fabric, just stick with your actual crotch measurement. Okay, so I'll go ahead now and roll it together. I'm also going to roll the hip line together as well. So the next thing is to mark the quarter of my hip measurement from my crotch line up to my waistline. Okay, and then I'm going to connect it together. So the quarter of my hip is 10 inches. As you can see, I marked it at the waist and also at the crotch line, and also mark it together. So for us to get the crotch extension, what you are going to do is to divide the quarter of your hip measurement, and after dividing 4 divided by 10, I have 2.5. So I mark the 2.5 here, which is going to serve as my crotch extension. Now for you to know how much fabric you need to fold, this crotch extension is what is going to determine how much fabric you need, so you should always keep that in mind. So I'm going to mark the tie line, which is usually 2 to 3 inches below your crotch line, and then go ahead and mark it together. So once this is done, the next thing I'm going to do now is to determine the center, is to come up here. You can see this area, you go up by 1 inch and then curve your crotch. Make sure you curve it like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is to determine the midpoint of this trouser, and the midpoint is from here to this point, which is going to be my crotch, and I have about 13 inches, and the center of 13 inches is 6.5. So that is going to serve as the midpoint of this trouser. Now from this midpoint, I'm going to start taking my crotch measurement, which is 13.5, and on both sides you're going to mark the allowance there. You also take the tie measurement. My tie measurement is 12 inches and is 24 inches, and half of 24 inches is 12. Now the 12, you are going to divide it into 2, and you will share it on both sides of the midpoint of the trouser. You do the same thing for the crotch, for the length of the trouser as well. Okay, now at the waist, I also took the quarter of my waist measurement. All right, so after doing that, you now go back and start adding the 6 inches we took off that I marked separately. You are going to be adding it to your waist, to the hip, to the crotch, to the thigh, and also to the length of the trouser. Okay, and after marking it out, you are going to curve it, you're going to shape it together, and you do the same thing. You're also going to shape the other side of the trouser as well. You're also going to add 1/2 inch to the crouch area here. Okay, and this area is going to serve as a sewing allowance. So I'll go ahead now and cut this out. By the time we smoke this, it will become smaller. Okay, it doesn't matter if it is big, it's still going to become smaller by the time you smoked it. So I'm going to use the front pattern to cut out the back, and I've folded the back into 2, and I'm going to place the front pattern on the back. So at the front crouch, to measure the back, I'll come down by 1/2 inch. Okay, from the actual front crouch, just mark 1/2 inch downward. So after marking the 1/2 inch downward, you then go ahead and mark 1.5 inches for the back extension, and the other part you're going to be marking 1 inch on the other part. Now when I'm stitching the front and back together, I'll be using 1/2 inch to stitch it together, because 1 inch is what I'm going to marking here. If it is 2 inches you are marking, you are going to be joining by 1 inch. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to now mark all of the lines together. I'm going to connect all of the mark together. All right, so on this corner here, okay, I will go up by 2 inches for the back, and then you connect it back to the crouch extension that you have here. You can see what I'm doing. Just mark it like that. So the next thing is to determine the measurement you have in between the midpoint of the trouser and the center line of the front, because this line at the crouch is the center front. So what I have is 3.5, and half of it is going to be 1.25. Now you are going to mark it upward. Now you remember the extension we have at the front, you know, the crouch extension, which was the quarter, which was 4 divided by 10, and I have 2.5. So the extension of 2.5, you're going to mark it. Okay, that 2.5, you will mark it on this point here. You're going to mark it on this point here. You mark 2.5 on this point here. So this point now is going to be the new center back. Okay, that's going to be the new center back. Now I'll mark the actual waist measurements at the front. Okay, and then I'll extend it. I'll extend the waist. Now you mark the actual waist measurement at the back at the center of the back, and then you slant it to the waist extension that I marked over there, and that is going to serve as the back waist. Just follow this simple instruction and you will get it. So you can see what I did now. So from that point now, you now connect back to the crouch that I've already marked there. You can see what I'm doing. Just follow the step. So once that is done, you can see you are now going to be adding 1 inch to this other side as well. The waist area you add 1 inch, the crouch area you also add 1 inch. Okay, the thigh area you add 1 inch, and the length of the trouser you also add 1 inch. So when you are stitching together, you are stitching by 1/2 inch. If it is 2 inches you had, you'll be stitching by 1 inch, and then you connect together. Now at the back crouch, you also need to add 1/2 inch joining allowance to the back crouch, just as I'm doing right now. So once that is done, this is all for the back. You can see this is very simple. So slanting the back will enable your trouser to sit very well at the back without being bulky or being puffy at the back. It will allow the trouser to lay well at the back. This is how I usually cut my trouser, whether with zipper or elastic. So right here is the back and here is the front. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to mark what I have at the front and also mark what I have at the back. So after adding it together, I have 32 inches. Okay, so that 32 inches, I'm going to be minusing 1 inch from it. Remember I'm going to stitch one side of this trouser by 1/2 inch on both sides, so I will minus the 1 inch from it. So the 32 inches, I'm going to be cutting times 2 of the 22 inches, which is going to serve as the gathers. Okay, So this is the gathers. I'm going to be cutting times 2 of the 32 inches, and I have 62 inches, and the length of these gathers is 20 inches. Okay, so I'm going to be folding the lower part of this gathers and then gather the upper parts of this fabric, and then you're going to stitch it at the side. I hope you understand. So for the trouser, what you're going to do is to mark. So for the trouser, I'm going to be stitching the elastic thread on each of these trousers separately. I'm going to be stitching them separately, and before you stitch it, make sure you mark 1/2 inch at the top and also at the lower part, which is going to serve as where you're going to join the band and where you're going to join the gathers. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. You can see the marks on the waist and at the lower part of the trouser. So right here is the smoky thread, okay, and I've reeled it on the bobbin. You can see it right here now. So I'm going to put the bobbin inside the bobbin case. Now the bobbin case, you're going to lose the bolt a little bit. You can see this bolt here. Just lose it a little bit, okay, and then you place it inside and pull out the thread. Make sure you don't lose it too much so that when stitching on the fabric, the thread is not going to be losing on the fabric. So I'll just go ahead now and pull it up. So the elastic thread is going to be under, while the normal thread is going to be on top, and you are going to be sewing on the right side of the fabric, as you can see. So I'll advise that you mark the fabric, okay, and the interval is going to be 1/2 inch. If possible, just do a mark of 1/2 inch interval so that you are on point and you won't have any irregularity on, you know, while sewing it. So here is what it looks like after smoking it together. You can see that it has become smaller. So I'm going to do this for the rest of the pieces. So right here I've done that for the rest of the pieces, and this is what I have. So I'm going to pick the front together and I'll go ahead and stitch it at the crouch. I'm going to be using the normal thread to stitch it, and then I'll also pick the back and also sew it at the crouch area using the normal thread. So this is what I have after stitching with the normal thread. You can see how stretchy it is. So right here now I'm going to place this together and then go ahead and sew it on the both side, okay. Also, you are going to be using the normal stitch, and at the crouch area here you're also going to stitch it together, okay. From the middle you stitch it down to the length of the trouser, but you're going to be leaving about 1 inch opening around there. This will enable you to sew these gathers around it. So I've gone ahead to gather this fabric and I've stitched the lower part of it using the overall measurement that I calculated before. All right, so the next thing now is to go and sew these gathers around the lower part of this trouser, and make sure you are stretching it as you are sewing, and you're going to be using the elastic thread to sew the gathers on this trouser, okay. You'll be using the elastic thread to sew it the same way we did when we were sewing the thread on the fabric. So I've gone ahead to stitch the gathers to the trouser and I've stitched everything together. You can see what I have. Make sure you weave all the allowance that you've took in, and as you are weaving it, make sure you are stretching it as you are weaving it. I've also gone ahead to stitch the band on the top of the trouser. I also use the elastic thread to stitch the band, okay, and I'll go ahead now and start passing the elastic. So my waist measurement is 33 inches and I deducted 6 inches from my waist, and what I have is 27 inches. So the length of this elastic is 27 inches. So guys, I've gone ahead to pass it all around. So I loosed a little bit at the back to enable me to pass the elastic around. So I'll just go ahead now and stitch it back. All right, so after stitching it back, I'm going to show us what it looks like. So guys, I've gone ahead to stitch it together so you can see how beautiful this is looking right now. So the rough edges, I weave the rough edges, and when you are doing it, make sure you are stretching it as you are weaving it, okay. You can see how beautiful this is looking. So guys, thank you for watching this video to the end, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider to subscribe and like this video. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.